In 5 years of hearing what you say and applying it in my life, I've never worked full-time again since my first workshop with you. I am in the least amount of debt that I've ever been in, and the only debt that I have is one fabulous money-making property, and all the other properties have been paid for. And I'm so thankful. I'm just so thankful that you're doing what you're doing, and I'm so thankful that I care about what my life is like enough to listen to what you're saying. And I've done it right, I've done it wrong, I've done it all. And thank you.
Well, we like that you're doing it in a way that feels good, because that's ultimately the way that is working, isn't it? People talk about success, and we know you're having a lot of it. And we always like to say that the joy factor is the success factor, because everything else will follow. Once you get that in place, then all the other things have to follow that. Yeah, really good.
They do. And so I'm wondering about the emotional guidance scale more specifically. Does everyone have the same emotional guidance scale?
Well, really, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because the relationship between who you really are and where you are, that's what equals your scale.
Who you really are and where you are?
Life has caused you to become more and more and more. Now, we know it's confusing. Sometimes we talk about the scale this way, sometimes we talk about the scale this way, but this tuned into who you really are, that's the receiving mode. And so when you're in the receiving mode, you're in that love and appreciation and so forth, and the further you get from it, the worse it feels. And you have lots of different ways that you describe in words what that variance is. But of course, this is the perfect question at this point in our workshop evolution, because of course it's different for everyone, because no two people are in exactly the same place. That's why your navigational systems that you have in your vehicles or in your phones don't just have one destination and one current location. They don't all say, okay, all of you must go to Atlanta, and then we'll lead you to where you want to be. Or they don't just say, go to Atlanta, and then we'll lead you to the only place that we can navigate you to. There are infinite possibilities, aren't there? Just as there are infinite possibilities of what you might have put into your vortex and where you might be in relationship to it. So the scale itself, we mean your awareness of the emotions that you are feeling. But all of that is a variable depending upon how much you want it, how long you've wanted, how much momentum there is, how many engines you've got going that way, how many engines you've got going that way. Every emotional scale and every guidance system is individually tailored precisely to you.
I love that answer. So I remember when it was up and down, and I remember when it was side to side and upstream and downstream, and I'm choosing for myself to do a lazy Susan analogy. I get to be in the middle, all the feelings are around me, and I can just turn and turn into more joy, and it's less effort for me.
That's a good analogy. And so where's depression on this lazy Susan?
I try to leave that one out of the scale. No, that would be at the bottom. Fear and depression is at the edge. You're right. I get what you mean.
And so if it's out here on the outer edge, so what you're saying is you want to meditate and go back to neutral where you can then choose what you want?
Yeah, or I just like it to be a pivoting.
You're just trying to fix up your lazy Susan analogy because it doesn't really work otherwise.
It's so true. It's okay. It only works in my mind, and that's fine with me. So what I'm wanting to do, I guess, is I can move up scale very quickly. And I listened to what you said. I've practiced that. I can go up really quickly. And of course, that's enjoyable. I'm less satisfied with how quickly I can move down the scale. And I really appreciate the last hot seater for a million reasons. But he touched upon that idea that sometimes you're not as aware and you dip into something that you're not wanting to feel.
But isn't it a good thing if you're not aware that it gets big enough that you become aware of it? What's the big deal in that? Step 1 is ask, you know about that, blah, blah, blah. Step 2 is answer, you know about that. Your inner being holds your vortex, blah, 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 you know about that. Step 3 is you got to get in the receiving mode. We've talked about that all day. Step 4 is you become a master at being in the receiving mode. funny that step 4 is just a really good step 3, but that's what it is. You're more consistently in step 3, and then step 5 is you're not mad at yourself when you're back in step 1 again. And so in this process of emanating a vibration, which is your point of attraction, and everything answering that, don't you just love knowing that it doesn't matter where you are at any time in relationship to where you want to be, you can always get to where you want to be. Isn't that really the only thing that you need to know? That it really does not matter? Once you have that confidence, the reason that you can go up the scale or down the scale quickly, and we would say even equally quickly, is because you're a really good focuser. And what you focus on, you get a vibration going. In other words, you're like a dog on a bone. When you get hold of a thought, you stay there long enough that a lot of things activate around it. But you see, there's never any danger or urgency or struggle that you will ever again live because you know how it works. So what difference does it make? You could go to the depths of despair and your inner being isn't suffering one bit on your behalf. Especially now because your inner being knows that you know what negative emotion means and you know what to do about it. And meanwhile, in the negative emotion, you're going to stir up some contrast that's going to be of benefit anyway. So win-win, 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 win-win-win.
So how could I have a better belief than about anger? I seem to just have really strong beliefs about what it means to either express anger or to not express anger. And for me, joy is a really powerful feeling. It's bursts out of me. I've jumped off of your stage into somebody's arms just because I'm so excited. And if I'm angry, there's a whole lot of energy moving through me. It feels uncomfortable, horrible, and it's going to come out. And I'm not feeling like, it's like I don't see all of the choices of what could be better, of just how to get it out in a great way.
In the moment of the anger?
Move on up, yeah.
Well, what about looking for the benefit of it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm angry, and since things are always working out for me, then this is a good thing, not a bad thing. So let's just talk for just a minute, since this is the emotion that you're tripping over, and let's figure out why you're tripping and what it means. So we have just a question or two for you. So you acknowledge that you'd so much rather feel good than not good, yes?
Absolutely.
And when you feel angry, let's say it's someone else, it's because you must still believe that they need to do something different in order for you to feel good. They must somehow be depriving you in some flawed premise way that's going on in your mind of the joy that you want and deserve. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
What could be any other reasonable explanation of why you'd be angry about something? Think about yourself being angry about something just for a moment. And so think about what it always means. It always means whatever it is I'm angry at, whoever it is that I'm angry at, I think is preventing me from something that I want. Isn't that always the case?
Mm-hmm.
Your reasonable mind knows otherwise now.
Right.
So doesn't it follow then that after a while of accepting that no one can prevent you from anything, mm-hmm. and that even you can't long-term prevent yourself from anything because you're going to figure it out. So isn't that an irrational and an unnecessary thought to hold, since nobody can prevent you from anything?
Yes, it's totally irrational. Usually if I feel anger, it doesn't have a lot to do with the other person. Certainly there, were some actions or there was a behavior or something like that. What it feels like to me is it feels really powerful, really strong, really negative, and it makes me feel confused about who I am. Because I know what I know. I know that they have nothing to do with my life.
But that's where step 5 comes in. So why are you confused about having a guidance system that works?
So what does my inner being want me to do?
So this is the question that we want to put to you first, then we'll answer that. Okay. Here's the question. So is anger an indictment on who you are? Or is anger an indication of where you are in relationship with thought? Is recognizing that you feel anger, do you think that's your inner being wanting to say to you, yeah, we're over here and you're over there, we're over here and you're over there? Nothing like that. Your words are really piercing and important. Makes me question who I am? Really? I'm a sensing being with an emotional guidance system? That's like getting in your car and your gas tank says empty and you say, who am I? Who am I? Oh man, I should always have a full tank. I need to beg for forgiveness. Who am I? You're somebody with a guidance system. And here's what we really want you to know is the answer to that question, who am I? Is I'm someone who ought to be feeling this way, who isn't. That's who I am. Because if your inner being wasn't feeling very different about this very exact thing that you're focused upon, you'd be feeling like your inner being feels. And so who am I is someone who is confused about who I am.
I am. Definitely. Got any more on that?
Esther got into the elevator up on the whatever floor she's on. It's a service elevator, which they have allowed her to use so that she can move efficiently into the room. And when she got onto the elevator, first thing this morning, there was a man on the elevator who had a cart of things. And he said to her, you have to use the other elevator. And she said, no, I have permission to use this elevator, but he wouldn't move his cart. He said, no, you have to use the other elevator. And she said, no, I'm allowed to use this elevator. He says, you have to use the other elevator. He wouldn't move his cart. And Esther didn't feel anger rising. She felt that if she would just explain to him, that then he would understand. So she said, no, I have permission to be on this elevator. And would you let me on, please? He said, you have to use the other elevator. And now Esther is thinking, I'm going to miss the damn meeting. While I argue with this guy about whether I should be on his elevator or not. And Esther thought, I really can't get on as long as he is telling me I can't get on. I'm not going to beat him up, although she wanted to. She wanted him to understand. She wanted him to understand. It felt important to this moment that he understand. So it was a harmony that was necessary because she knew she was going to get on the elevator. She was standing in the door. He wasn't going to go anywhere either. His elevator was not going to close as long as she was standing there. So they had a sort of stalemate happening. He wouldn't let her on and she wouldn't let him go. And so sometimes you're at that sort of stalemate, aren't you? Where you want something that you're not allowing. And so nobody's going anywhere. And nobody liked it either. Esther could have just stepped back and she thought, well, I'll just let him go. And after he's gone, I'll just use the elevator. Instead of being angry, she found a sort of solution. So she stepped back. And as soon as she stepped back, he moved his cart out of the way. And when he moved his cart out of the way, then she got on. So the solutions are so close. But now it could have gone either way. You just have to decide how it's going to go. And so the key is the earlier you catch yourself in the leaning toward anger, then the easier it is for you to not lean toward it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, we know you know all of that. We've had all of these conversations before. But there's something more stuck in your vibrational craw. Do you think it's the self-judgment, the self-evaluation, the self-determination to call yourself? Do you think that being in alignment with your inner being makes you a better person than when you're not in alignment with your inner being? We're asking all of you this.
Well, I would probably say yes to that, even though I know it doesn't serve me.
So we have another question to ask. Do you think your inner being thinks that you're a lesser person when you're not in alignment?
My inner being thinks I'm the bomb.
So your inner being is not the source of the negative emotion, would you say?
Well, it is. It's the gap.
The gap is the reason, but the reason there's a gap is because your inner being is holding tight to your inner being's love and appreciation of you, and you have varied from it. So your inner being is not the reason. Now, your logic says, well, wait a minute. If my inner being didn't love me so much, then my self-loathing wouldn't hurt so bad. That's true, but your inner being is not ever going to move over to self-loathing with you. So what is the only option? You've got to come home to who you really are.